Okay, lesson 9. If you pay attention, you see that the subjects that we are discussing are all coherently linked with one another. They are overlapping with each other. And sometimes you wonder if one is not almost the same as the other subject. That's correct. This is not compartmentalized, it doesn't stand on its own. If it stands on its own, it doesn't make sense, there is no logic. Today, we will come to a conclusion of the yamas and the niyamas, with the final 2 niyamas. Now you noticed already that many of the subjects, if not explained properly, seem very superficial, seem to have little connection to ourselves and our daily life experiences, situations. The opposite is true. Yoga is the science of life, and it is the science of self. And it leads eventually, no, not eventually, it already started, but it leads more and more to the discovery of the true self. Lesson 9, the title of the subject is Svadhyaya. Sva means self. Adhyaya is study. Svadhyaya is not self-study, but actually it is more like study of the self. Now, if you don't practically understand this subject, it's just one of those other superficial issues that do not seem to belong to a whole that we are trying to create here. If I'm a bad teacher, I will tell you today's subject is self-study. So from today, study yourself. And you will scratch your head and you will say, oh yeah, sure. And you go home and you're more confused than you were when you came to class, before you came to class. And it seems like yoga is only for a select few people, because it's too difficult, it's too high, it's too unrealistic. Self-study, that is not for normal people. And yet, the reality is very simple, because self-study has already started. From the moment that you stepped into your first yoga class here, your self-study has already begun. So self-study is not for the elite, it's not for a select few. Self-study happens very naturally and spontaneously. Then why do we need to discuss this? That is because yoga leads to all kinds of changes, increased sensitivity and consciousness, including about the self. But it is a process that happens for a large part subconsciously. When you know how it works, when you know where it is designed to go, to lead, the developments you can expect, the process is much more efficient. You grow much faster than if the process is happening subconsciously.
I hate to interrupt you right now, but are you sure that's recording?
Oh, cool. Thank you. Multitasking is not for men. And not for yogis either. Thank you, Alana.
And she noticed.
Thank you, Hyunjin. You know, see, women are much smarter than men. No, I'm not being sarcastic. What are men without women in this world? Nothing, right? Svadhyaya, self-study. If you missed the first part, look at the video. Because I turned on the sound recording too late. Self-study. Why do we need self-study? You would say, you would argue, I know who I am. I'm Ron. I'm Dutch. I'm a man. Stupid. I'm a stubborn yogi. Yes. Talking about superficial, that is all superficial. I'm not Dutch. I'm not necessarily a man, typically. We know. We have feminine and masculine qualities, so what is being a man or being a woman? It's much more complicated than dividing that into two. Being Dutch, or German, or Korean, or Chinese, whatever, that is also superficial. When we cut ourselves, we all have the same blood. When we are hurt, we all feel the same pain. And yet, these identifications seem to dominate the life of all human beings. If I watch the news and there is some positive news about the Netherlands, my chest swells up and I feel pride. That is the normal reaction, right? And it is okay to feel pride as long as you are conscious of it. Self-study is not about being Dutch or being a man or a woman or a yogi or a lawyer or a doctor. Self-study is about your heart's content, soul consciousness. If I present it in that way, it's a little bit complicated, because now the difficult question starts, okay, then if I'm not a man or a woman, if I'm not my nationality, if I'm not my job, now I'm getting dizzy. Who am I then? That's a little bit tricky, and it can leave you kind of desperate for answers. It's not that complicated. Just go about your daily life, but now with another perspective. You fulfill your roles in your job, in your family, in your circle of friends, but with a new perspective. You start from today more and more paying attention to what you feel, what you really feel, not what other people tell you. We live in a world where we are constantly being indoctrinated about what we need to think, what we need to feel, what we need to be, even. For me, as a teenager, that led to very big trouble. I got lost as a teenager. My parents divorced, I failed in school, all kinds of issues occurred that can happen to teenagers who don't have a solid foundation. And the question, who are you, becomes very important there. And I only found my way because I started practicing yoga. That is where I left everything behind and just started following my heart. As you know from previous classes, that led me to pursue the path of yoga. But then the next step was my interest in martial arts, so I registered at a Hapkido gym. And that led me to come to Korea, and etc., etc. Without yoga, that would never have happened. I would probably not be alive anymore. I come from a big family. 4 boys, 3 girls. I'm one of those 4 boys. 2 of those boys have died already. I would have died too. Just from alcohol and drug abuse and just sheer misery. From disconnection. not knowing who I am and what this life is all about, other than just misery and trying to suppress that misery. So simply start at the beginning. And your previous subjects, purity, austerity, basically all the yamas and niyamas that you have studied so far, you apply those in your life. So you first and foremost start being very honest. On a daily basis you are doing things that you are told to do since you were born. Not only do, but you are even shaped in some form to think in a particular way. Not your way, but the way that your parents, your teachers, society have indoctrinated you to think. Based on truthfulness, purity, saucha. Whenever you feel resistance with what you are doing, when you feel resistance with what you are thinking, investigate. Try to figure out why you don't agree instead of just going along with it as people usually do, as you are usually told to do. Your boss will tell you to do so, your parents tell you to do so, your teachers tell you to do so. Just accept it, just go along. It's just like it is. That kind of answers you get. Yoga creates harmony in you, which translates into more peace of mind. Instead of going up and down all the time in a restless pattern, you become more and more even-minded. This has a huge implication in your functioning. Because as long as you were restless, going up and down, which is accompanied by mental activity and restlessness, you are not conscious and sensitive enough to notice the dissonance that you feel inside your heart. You just go along with everything just because you are supposed to. But now you are becoming a yogi, and peace occurs in you more and more. As a result, your mind becomes calmer, your intuition becomes bigger, your sensitivity increases, your consciousness widens. And that leads you to be more aware of resistance that you feel that you couldn't feel before. And this is where you have to start paying attention, because what you really feel, that is eventually that will lead you to sva, or self. Self with a capital S. So self-study, Svadhyaya, is a natural, spontaneous process that all yogis go through. If yoga is practiced correctly, meaning that it leads to the generation of energy that doesn't condense toward the bottom, but rises up and leads to increased consciousness and sensitivity. It is based on sensitivity that you discover who you really are, beyond your culture and your sex and your education, your identifications since you were a child. So you see in the handout, second paragraph, practicing Svadhyaya or self-study is only possible if you understand and practice saucha, tapas and santosha, purity, austerity and contentment. Last week we studied tapas, austerity, and I tried to explain, I hope that I succeeded, that there is a reason why we do these strenuous poses that make us feel uncomfortable. is not just like an exercise to make stronger muscle, to exercise the physical body. On the contrary, you're only using the body as a tool. And austerity means that you do that in a balanced and sensible way. Because if you go too far, you overshoot the goal. You create restlessness rather than peace of mind. If you don't do anything at all, your energy becomes inert and condenses toward the bottom. So the practice of austerity, subjecting yourself consciously to discomfort in order to become more comfortable. Comfortable equals sattva, harmony, peace of mind. And peace of mind is the foundation. So austerity is the foundation of your yoga practice. Without asana, there is no transformation of your energy household. But it leads to a condition that is then the foundation, that stability, that harmony is then the foundation for your unfolding consciousness. To understand that, you have to look at the chakras. The higher chakras are the location of consciousness, wisdom, insight, intuition. And if it is correct, even though we're only at the beginning of the course, you already notice that your consciousness is changing. That you are indeed becoming more sensitive already at the beginning of the course. And this explains why. Practicing of yoga done correctly leads to energy rising up to where? To that location where all those higher characteristics are located. Consciousness, wisdom, insight, vision, intuition. If there is no energy there, it doesn't function. Simple example, look at what is happening around the world because of the coronavirus. Many people end up in a panic. Understandable, but it shows where those people's energies are. If you end up in a supermarket buying 200 rolls of toilet paper, which seems to be a big issue in all the countries around the world, it shows that people are not functioning based on higher consciousness. They are functioning based on the very lowest instinct of survival. Yoga is the science of life, and it is designed to help you consciously deal with those instincts. Those instincts are important, otherwise you wouldn't survive. But it is the way how you deal with them that makes the big difference. If you want to prepare for a possible lockdown, fill your fridge with food instead of toilet paper. What are you going to do with toilet paper if there's no food? You don't even need to go to the toilet anymore if you can't eat. Good, all jokes aside. Austerity leads to generation of energy, not just energy, but vital energy. Vital energy rises up. Inert energy goes to the bottom. So totally opposite. It's the difference between, you can see, when you look around you, you see people who are very inert, very tamas, and you see people who are very vital, active, youthful, sparkling. That is the difference between inert energy and vital energy. Vital energy in Korean is called ki. Yeah? Ki or chi or prana is not just energy, it's vital energy. It's energy that creates. It's energy that makes growth possible. Inert energy manifests in matter, solid matter. So literally, many people are stuck in that condition, inertia. Saucha is very important because you need to be conscious of your motives. We have, of course, discussed that very extensively last week. Or was it the week before? That was the week before. Anyway, purity. The human mind is very tricky. We have a tendency to shape and bend things into our own favor. We see the world through lenses that are individual. Purity means that you think again, that you look again. Am I being 100% honest about my reasoning? Or am I just trying to bend things into my favor? As a yogi, developing more and more sensitivity and consciousness, in the beginning it may seem complicated and difficult, but you will see, you don't have to worry. The things that we discuss here on the surface may seem complex or even impossible, but purity, the way that you constantly question yourself, why you think what you think, why you judge the way you judge, it becomes a natural characteristic. So just be patient and continue practice of tapas. Purity is a natural consequence of your development. And like I said before, it works even better, and it is more efficient if you understand how it works. Saucha is the first of the niyamas, which is a principle that you must choose to implement in your life. Next time when confronted with a situation where you judge the situation to be such and such, you ask yourself, am I being truthful here? Or just trying to find the easy way out? Or just putting the blame on someone else while I should look in the mirror? But it is a natural process most of all. Santosha, contentment. Contentment is important to remain relatively harmonious, relatively peaceful. Life is full of challenges. And if you act as an instinctive human being, you'll never be content, which explains the restlessness in society, which explains why everybody is running around like headless chicken, going from A to B and back and forth and again and again. It's never enough. It's never satisfactory. The problem with this attitude or this kind of behavior is that it doesn't allow you to be in harmony. And when there is no harmony, all growth stops. So it sounds like a total paradox, a total contradiction. Let me tell you this, yoga is a paradox. Because it deals with the paradox of the opposing entities of plus and minus. Dark and light, negative and positive, feminine and masculine. So yoga is the science of paradox. So if you feel contradiction in what you are learning, it only confirms that it is right. It also shows that things are not two-dimensional. Everything has different angles. Contentment means that in spite of all the complexities, life is not easy. Although when you listen to me, it appears to be so. Life is not easy. Life is full of challenges. And there are years or months that you are very down and very unhappy. And there are years or months that you feel on the right track and feel that everything is coming together and all the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. And you think, yeah, finally, I did it. I'm there where I want to be. Only to come across another period where things seem to be falling apart again. This is where santosha, or the practice of contentment, becomes important. Because you are growing, developing, be satisfied with what you have achieved so far. And the reason for doing so, when you are in turmoil, when you find yourself in a down period, the reason for doing so is to remain as much as possible your harmony, so that things can fall together again, so that dots can connect again. It is the harmony that is the foundation for the next period of growth and development. So you try to keep a positive attitude. Last year I quit teaching. I had a bad year last year, actually. If you look at it from a human point of view and just judge it on a, if I would judge it on a two-dimensional, from a two-dimensional point of view, I would say last year was really bad. But I'm a yogi. I used my time in a positive way. I adopted 2 dogs, which from a normal human being's point of view seems the most stupid thing to do when you're at such a low point in your life. No, I had something to express my heart. I had something to wake up for every morning because they need to go out 5 o'clock. As a yogi, I know that. So I just go about the daily things to keep things going. Going back to teaching at that time was not an alternative because I was not inspired anymore. If you would have joined if I would have just only thought about, I have to go back teaching because I need to pay the bills and what have you, that would not have been pure. That would have violated almost all the yamas and the niyamas, especially the yamas. And you would have not liked the class, because I would be lacking inspiration and my teaching would be totally different. So I took a break. And just focus on contentment. So far, so good. It's not that bad. I have a house, I have 3 meals a day. And look, these wonderful dogs came and they found me. They knew that I needed them and they came into my life. You know, I walk on the riverside and some people are scared. They say, oh, so scary. 무섭게 생겼어요. But many people actually, they look and they see something different and they say, wow, what a beautiful dogs. Then I become a little bit cynical sometimes and I think, yeah, now you say what a beautiful dog. And last year nobody wanted to have them. That is my lower human thinking. The next step is, I feel pride. I feel privileged that the universe sent them to me. Contentment. Instead of looking at the negative things of life, look at the bright side of life. You know, that reminds me of you know, the British are very good at humor. So you have John Cleese and those other clowns, Mr. Bean. There was a group of these comedians. They made movies, Life of Brian and what have you. They have a song. Always look at the bright side of life. You know, it's funny. They are jokers. But actually the foundation of what they are doing is really empowering people with comedy. Try to adopt such an attitude. Always look at the bright side of life. If you don't know how, compare yourself and your life with people somewhere else. With people who are suffering, with people who are struggling, with people who have no control over their lives, people who have no food on the table, people who live in a place where there is war, violence, suffering, pain. Think about how life was 100 years ago. There are many ways to practice contentment. But be honest. Life is not so bad, but there is something that is bothering me. So first, accept things as they are, which is actually the subject of the afternoon. But maintain a positive attitude. Stay constructive. Keep going, keep doing what you need to do. And do not listen to what other people tell you. That sounds a little bit strange. But you know, since I started practicing yoga, people have constantly told me that what I'm dreaming of, what I'm pursuing, are you sure about that? Isn't it a little bit foolish? It happened with the dogs. You're alone. Why you take a dog? And then the second one came, and then another dog? No, that's not a good idea. But before I came to Korea, people told me, why you need to go to Korea? Don't be so stupid. You can just act normal. Just behave like a normal human being. But you know, trying to live like a normal human being made me lose all my hair. Seriously, I'm joking about it, but it's about energy being down or energy being up. As long as I practice yoga and stay focused on what I feel, practicing purity and honesty, I feel alive. This vital energy is circulating and radiating, and I'm brimming with energy. But the moment that I try to be normal, it's like a wet cloth, you know, you clean the floor with a wet cloth and then you squeeze the cloth. That is what happens with my energy, and your energy too. That energy then becomes inert and goes down. And you lose your enthusiasm, you lose your color, you lose your happiness, you lose all your wonderful qualities. And it took me a long time to understand how it works. It took me a long time to understand also, when looking around, that most people are actually in that dark condition where energy is gravitating, condensing towards the bottom. I don't want to go there anymore. Less and less. Because I recognize it now and I know what I need to do. And it often means doing things that other people think is not good. Because other people think from their belly, based on fear. And they say, oh no, don't do that. You have no idea what's going to happen. But you know, when you are living on energy here, in a very natural way, there is faith, there is belief, that if you follow your heart, everything will be fine. Following your heart, that is yourself. And the only way to practice self-study actually is by starting to follow your heart. Because your heart is yourself. All the rest is superficial. All the rest is adopted from the environment, from your education, from what your parents told you, from the media. The media these days, of course, have a huge influence on how we think and how we act and how we function. then people will say, ah, you are eccentric. You know what eccentric means?
Outside the middle.
Eccentric, generally people look at the word in a not so positive way. The Korean word for eccentric is I forgot. Huh? Kwecha. That is the right word. Kwecha. I'm proud to be a kwecha. Because I understand what it means. You know why being eccentric is being frowned upon by most people? Because they don't understand they only see that you're being different. More importantly, they see that everything you do differently from what is accepted and what is normal. But we understand the reason why you do things differently. That is because you have discovered yourself with a capital S. You have left behind how you have been told to think and to act. And you have replaced that with your own way of thinking and acting. Kwecha, or an eccentric person, is somebody who does everything in a very particular way. Things need to be done in a certain way, and when other people come and they do it in their way, you feel disturbed. Simple example, the way I wash my dishes. I have a certain way of doing that. I have a certain way or place where I put my dishes and my bowls and my cups. So if another person comes to wash my dishes and puts everything in a different place, if I'm not a yogi and I'm not conscious, I would get angry. No, you must do it like this and you must do it like that and blah, blah. That is when you are a perfectionist. A yogi is not a perfectionist. So I just smile. But the reason why you put things here and there, as opposed to where other people put it, is for you, it has a reason why you do that. There is nothing in your life anymore that you do without proper reason. Everything has a logic, everything has a pattern, everything has a reason. Otherwise you wouldn't do it. Does it mean that your way is the right way? Yes, until you find out that it can be done differently. So you're not fanatic, you're not perfectionist, but you are perfectionist in a very friendly, benign way. Because everything you do mindfully. That is practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness, a couple of years, suddenly became a buzzword, a fashion. But that is this. Follow your feeling, follow your heart, and you become eccentric too. But from today, you know that that is a good thing, not a bad thing. But it means that often people do not agree with you. And sometimes you think, well, when people don't agree with me, actually that makes me a little bit unhappy, because then you have some friction and maybe even conflict. And you have a tendency to avoid that conflict. But then you have conflict with yourself. Then you feel bad because you didn't do what you wanted to do or how you wanted to do it. So nothing in life is easy. Nothing in life is simple. Not when you are a yogi. But what is important, because of purity, is that you stick to your guns. And you deal with the conflicts that possibly arrive. How? Not with conflict. With love, with understanding. Try to understand that the person who is judging you and the way that you do things doesn't understand what you know, what you understand. Yet. They have the potential too to come to that point, but they are not there yet. So let it go. In the beginning, you will have lots of fights with people. Because deep in your heart you know what you're... Then people come to you and tell you that it's not. Especially in relationships. But you cannot live like that. You lose more hair. So the answer to that is simply to be flexible. Do not compromise, because then you feel compromised yourself. If you try to avoid conflict with another person, you will get a conflict inside yourself if it is because you change your way of doing things just to keep the peace with other people. At the bottom is a paragraph about karma. It's very much related to self-study. To understand karma, when we think about karma, we think, you know, if I act bad, then bad things will happen to me sooner or later. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but sooner or later. That's true. But karma goes much deeper than that. There is an element about yoga that not everybody accepts, but yoga goes out from the point of view that you are being reborn. There is a cycle of rebirth taking place that started with the birth of the universe. To understand that in a practical sense, just try to ask yourself, why? When I was born with certain characteristics. I was born with certain qualities, personality. But your brother or your sister or your neighbor or people from other families or other countries, they were born with different characteristics, different personality. Some people are born in very miserable circumstances. Some people are born in very auspicious, very, very good circumstances. The question is why? In the universe, or in life, there is no coincidence. When I was young, I was very sad because I was born in circumstances that were much worse than those of my fellow kids in the class in school. Or so I thought. But when you see other people in much happier circumstances, in much more stable circumstances, you ask yourself why? And why me? Especially when you're young and not fully developed yet mentally, intellectually. That can make you very emotional. It's the reason why 2 of my brothers have died in their mid-40s. They've never been able to understand. But you know, there is an expression in English, in American. If life presents you with lemons, make lemonade. That is the yoga approach. It is very difficult to see, it is very difficult to understand, but the universe has a plan for everybody. And if you are born in certain circumstances, it is designed for you specifically to grow and develop. I was put in that misery, or what I think is misery, it's only my judgment, to stimulate me to grow, to overcome my karma from previous lives. in previous lives, I must have done something that caused disharmony. Maybe I was born during wartime, or maybe I ended up in a war and I did bad things, or whatever. You can just, nobody knows. There are people who claim to know what they did in previous lives. That is nonsense. Because your previous life is a very super subtle feeling. You can get a little bit an idea of what it was, but you'll never have visions of what it looked like. You know, a couple of years ago, somebody put an article in the New Yorker, I think, or somewhere, being very skeptical about yoga teachers who claim to have memory of their previous lives. And I've seen teachers like that. When they talk about their previous lives, it's always heroic. They're either Alexander the Great, or Napoleon, or somebody great. It's never a poor beggar under the bridges of Paris, or somebody, you know, miserable, or a murderer, or a thief. And I really smiled when I read that article, because it addressed an issue that is rampant. There are many yoga teachers who claim to have had glorious previous lives, and nonsense. It's very subtle. It's difficult to talk about also. What I'm trying to explain here is that you would say you get what you deserve in life. And I deserved to be in such a situation where I became very miserable and was on my path towards self-destruction, like my two brothers. But I transformed. And based on everything that I'm teaching you now, I took control of my life. I connected with my heart's content, my true self, not my family, not my identity, my misery, my sadness. I came back to my core, to my essence, as a result of yoga practice. And contentment here means to accept things as they are. And instead of letting it bring you to self-destruction, doing something positive with it, doing something constructive with it. Example, I'm sitting here as a yoga teacher, very passionately telling you about what yoga really is about. That would not have been possible without my past experiences. This is really what karma means. It took many years, but I came to the place where I need to be. And it has nothing to do with all the dreams that I had as a child of being a pilot or a doctor or a truck driver or whatever, Bruce Lee. Because those were all superficial. Those were all caused by images that you receive from your environment. Yoga, on various occasions, especially on higher level of your study, in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, yoga tells you that you become timeless, eternal, and you become the master of the universe. Now when you hear all that, you think, sure. Can we go back to practicing some exercise? No, these are symbolical quotes. These are symbolical texts that express something very wonderful. It doesn't mean that you become immortal. There are yoga teachers who claim it's possible to be immortal. if you can balance Shiva and Shakti completely. Nonsense. That is not what those texts mean when they talk about becoming eternal and flying through the universe, becoming the master of the universe. Becoming eternal means that you are not anymore a child of your time. We are all a child of our time, influenced by the time in which we were born. So I was born in a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you which year. I was born a long time ago. The world was very different from the time that many of you were born, like 20, 30 years later. That initially determines who you are, how you express yourself, even the way you think. Becoming the master of the universe and becoming eternal in a practical sense means that you rise above your conditioning. You connect with your heart's content, and what remains is the self that would have been the same as 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, or 5,000 years in the future. That is your essence, that is your core. But the way that you think, influenced by the time in which you were born, that is superficial. Can you understand that a little bit? The self-study is to come back to what you really feel and follow up on that. And whatever people think about it, it's not important. The only thing that is important is what you think about it. Do not let other people deter you from you doing what you deep in your heart feel you need to do. It's not even about wanting to do or liking to do. Because, as I've said many times already, life is not easy when you choose this path. Life becomes actually more complicated. But everything starts making sense. For the first time in your life, you actually start to feel connected. You start to feel that you now know what it is that you want to do, where you need to go. It's easier to not do that. It's more comfortable to not do that, which is what most people choose to do. Then life becomes very boring, very grey. Even though people then think life is very exciting, because they fill their lives with superficial entertainment. In the disco, in the nightclub, in the cinema, shopping, traveling, and what have you. Which is all nice, not interesting anymore when you are connected with your heart's content. What are we talking about here? There is a very famous poem. You are walking on a road. Then suddenly you arrive at a fork in the road. 95% of the people go this way. Only a small amount of people, maybe 5, maybe less than 5, they go this way. Do you know this poem?
Yes.
It's called The Road Not Taken. Most Korean people know because they learned this in school, without knowing the deep meaning of this poem. The road not taken, that is the road that we are now on. It's the road of courage. It's the road of challenges and obstacles. Why is everybody going this way? Why? Because it's the easy way. Seems to be the easy way. But it is the way where there is no inspiration, there is no true love, there is no motivation, happiness, health. It is easy to follow the way where there is no challenges and no obstacles. Just ignore what you feel in your heart and just go along with what your parents tell you to do and your teachers tell you to do and your government tells you to do. If you go along and be a brave citizen and a brave daughter or son and a brave employee in the company that you work in, then everything will be fine. That works for many people. Many people go that way. But without knowing it, they have many conflicts in their lives. They'll never be happy, never be satisfied. But the person that connects with the heart, with their true characteristics, inevitably, it's not even a choice anymore, you end up on this road. Full of obstacles, full of challenges, but to you, obstacles and challenges don't have a negative meaning anymore. For those people, they think obstacles, challenges, no, I don't need all that in my life. You know, obstacles, challenges, yes, give me some more, because they make me grow, they make me develop. My obstacles and challenges make me more mature, make me wiser, make me understand who I am and where I need to go in my life. So once you connect, you have no choice anymore. It's a little bit sad though to see that so many people find it impossible to choose the road not taken. They find it impossible to follow their heart. You start practicing yoga, real yoga, proper yoga, standing still, meditation, etc., letting energy rise from the bottom upwards. It is inevitable that you end up on that road where you find not so many people. It doesn't make life easier, it makes life very wonderful. You feel like coming home. Truly home. Not in your apartment. Even that is superficial. You know, in Holland and many other countries, people put these tiles on the wall that says, home is where the heart is. And we make our house very cozy with nice lamps and carpet and nice wallpaper, furniture. And we say, yeah, home is where the heart is. But that's not what it means. If you're connected with your heart, your home can be on the moon or in the North Pole. If you're connected, you follow your heart, whatever the circumstances, no matter how uncomfortable the circumstances, you feel home. And that is what home is where the heart is really means. It's not about your apartment or your house. It's about here. You can live in a palace. In Songbukdong or Hannamdong, beautiful, huge villa where all the rich people live. Home is where the heart is. You can be very unhappy in such a big house. That's it. That is the significance of starting to follow the heart. Of course, we need to find a certain balance. You cannot just quit your job, say goodbye to your family, or even to your country, and just say, oh, today I'm going to follow my heart, everything will be fine. That is foolish. Yogi is not stupid. But if you feel resistance with what you are doing, you start planning. Very carefully, very systematically, step by step. In Holland we say you don't throw away your old shoes before you have a pair of new ones. So that transformation, that shift, that takes many years, if not even several decades take your time, enjoy the process. Contentment, practice of contentment is enjoy the process, including, and maybe especially, all the misery. Because the misery is part of your karma. Next time when you are confronted with misery in your life, try to overcome your ego. It is because of ego that you say, oh, I'm so miserable, I'm just a victim and the whole world is against me, and oh, look at poor me. But the yogi says, oh, misery. What is this misery trying to tell me? What is this misery trying to teach me? What can I do in a constructive way with this misery? That is contentment. To see that it all has a purpose. Not necessarily to make you miserable, but as a signal, as a teacher from the universe. If you can do that, it's not easy. I have ego, everybody has ego, and when misery strikes me, the first reaction is being miserable, but the next step should be to organize yourself and say, hey, what is going on here and why? And never look at other people, look at yourself. Don't put blame on other people. I'm in a process and I see that I'm going up, I'm growing, I'm developing. But if I look back, there are many bad people on that path. There are people who cheated and lied and didn't keep their promises. I can point my fingers and say, oh, all those people, but it's useless. These people, on the contrary, without those people, I would not have been able to grow and develop, in spite of their lying and cheating and breaking promises. Now that is a whole different way of looking at things, isn't it? When you have lemons, make lemonade. Turn everything that is negative. You know, in fact, I'm convinced that negative doesn't exist. Because when interpreted correctly, every negative turns into a positive. But that's only possible if you look at it from a neutral perspective and try to understand the underlying message. Why is it happening? What caused it? What did I do? No pointing fingers like, oh, they did this and they did that. Useless. You are in that situation for a reason, for a purpose. That is karma. There's a reason why you are there. If you don't do anything with that situation, your suffering will just continue. If, however, you have the courage to walk that path, the road not taken, you will interpret everything as a signal, as an obstacle, a challenge that will lead you to where you want to be further down the road. Can you see that? You know what this also means? Many people, they want to work hard for 10 years, 15 years, and then they just want to retire and be comfortable. You want that too? I wanted that too. It's impossible. As an ignorant, normal human being, it's possible. As a yogi, the moment that you sit on your laurels, the moment that you think, oh, now I can just retire and be comfortable, all the misery comes to you. What does it mean? You have to keep going on that path, the road not taken. You have to keep going There is no end. There is no retirement. That is an invention of the modern society, the modern human being. Your process stops when you die, and it will start again in the next life that you are born. And because you tried so hard in this life to learn, to overcome your ego, to deal with your misery, your challenges and obstacles in a positive and constructive way, you elevate yourself to a higher level in the next life. Buddhism has a very negative view of life. So they smile all the time. You might as well just smile, because life is so sad. Because Buddhism goes out from the point of view that you will be reborn at least 1,000,000 times. And 1,000,000 times you will have a miserable life. If you have such an attitude, indeed, you are not using this life to grow and evolve. So next life you will just start on that same low level where you were and you didn't do anything while you could. That is a little bit the Eastern philosophy. Buddhism, Hinduism, yoga, Taoism are all based on that philosophy. Even Christianity, I think, is based on this idea. Do your best in this life. Not in terms of gathering money and status, but in terms of being a good human being. By acting and reacting in a proper way to the conflicts, challenges and obstacles that you come across in life. Because that is where you grow. That is where you evolve. And if you don't believe in rebirth, that's okay. I'm not dogmatic. I didn't believe in rebirth in the past either. But when you start to see all this, there's no doubt in your mind anymore. So sooner or later you will start to see the logic. It explains where you are from and where you are going and what you need to do in this particular life. The yamas and the niyamas in that sense start presenting a very helpful guideline to smoothen the path. If you keep behaving like the human that you were until you found yoga, you will only create more disharmony and more conflict and more struggle. And so naturally, as the law of karma dictates, your suffering will just continue. If you don't believe in rebirth, you can reduce your suffering in this life by following these guidelines. In the end, that's what everybody wants. Nobody on purpose looks for conflict. Nobody on purpose wants to be miserable. Many people will say, yeah, well, it's just part of life. I will just suffer from it. No. That is very short-sighted. You say, if this is happening to me, it means I need to make some correction here or there. I must have done something wrong. Regardless of what other people do. Other people may behave bad, but it is you who came into that situation. There is a reason for that, don't forget. Okay. Questions? Yes? Simon?
After I practicing yoga,
Yeah.
I try to follow my heart, but sometimes it's difficult to distinguish heart and strong emotion. So I'm wondering, the ego is working or just my real heart is working?
Good question. That is actually that is very complex. That is very complex. When you talk about the heart and the mind, you talk about entities that seem to be separate, but in reality they are very strongly interconnected. And that makes it easy to talk about these kind of issues, but difficult in the long term to implement. That is why there is a book, a very thick book, that is dealing with this issue. It's the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a book that deals with the battle between the head and the heart. And the reason why that book is so thick is because indeed it is very complex, and it takes many years to get a grasp. When you are dealing with a dilemma, when you are dealing with an issue where you think, is it my head or is it my heart? What should I follow? You get two different kinds of signals, two different kinds of answers. In the beginning you don't know, because it's not exact science. The answer to that is simply try out. Try to make a guess of what you think is the heart speaking. Then follow up on it. If it leads to conflict and misery, apparently it was not the right conclusion. Then you correct. So you have to have the courage to just try, to just follow up. Sometimes you think that what the mind is telling you is the heart. You're confusing things. Because everything is very mixed. Everything is mixed. A human being is full of various levels of emotions and insights, and it's very complex. So I remember my own struggle to answer the question, is it my heart or is it my head? And my teacher told me, try to make a guess what you think is the heart and follow up on it. If it goes wrong, it gives you the answer. Then you try to explore the other. And when it feels good, and when things start to go smoothly, and when things seem to connect, then that was your heart. I think I mentioned the Bhagavad Gita before. It's an epic work that on the surface seemed to talk about a real war. The Bhagavad Gita is about a battlefield where people kill each other. But the main characters in the Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna, the warrior Arjuna, and Krishna. Krishna is of course a god. In the Bhagavad Gita is the mentor of Arjuna, the warrior. So basically, the Bhagavad Gita is comparing life with the battlefield. It is comparing your inner life, the heart, between the head and the heart, as a battlefield, and it is. So you have a lifetime to figure that out. And the best way to approach it, to learn and to grow and become more and more skillful at determining which is the head and which is the heart, is of course applying the yamas and the niyamas. You have to be bluntly honest with yourself, especially when you fail. But you have to have also courage to explore. You have to have the courage to make mistakes. Just try things out, knowing that it can end up in failure. Because that's the only way that you become more familiar with the head and the heart. your guideline is, does it feel good? Is the result feeling good or not? That's your guideline. If it's not good, don't be afraid to make a correction. Don't be afraid to admit failure and try another way. So not easy, but it will lead you to where you want to be. And you can avoid it, but then you will never get where you want to be. I'm trying to teach you the whole basic and advanced course in one day. I think we should have a short break. Yeah?